Welcome to the Rise to Intimacy podcast. I'm your host, Valerie McDonald, and for over a decade, I've worked as a sex and couples therapist because intimacy used to feel really overwhelming for me. I felt a lot of pressure to perform, I was disconnected from my body, and I often felt like desire was out of reach for me. But through my own trauma work, I stopped checking out of my body and started feeling connected to it again. I learned what it's like to experience intimacy without fear, without shutting down, and without numbing out. Now I'm on a mission to help you do the same thing. This podcast exists because trauma doesn't get the last word. You can learn how to calm your body, change the story you've been carrying, and rebuild real connection. First with yourself and then with the people you love. Let's begin. I want you to think about the last time you got into a fight with your partner. One where you walk away feeling like no matter how many times you try to explain it, they just don't get it. And you're left wondering if you're the only one who sees the problem. And if you're not currently in therapy, think about where you go for advice. Do you reach out to a friend or family member? Or do you watch something on TikTok that makes you see your partner differently? Maybe it was a video about how to identify red flags, or a clip where someone said, if they really loved you, they'd never do that. Or even a carousel post listing the 10 signs you're being gaslit. Because more and more lately, this is becoming a pattern that's showing up everywhere. People are walking into conversations with their partners armed with language from strangers on the internet, and that language is making their problems feel bigger than they actually are. But all too often, that language is doing real damage to your relationships. So today, I'm talking about why TikTok therapy advice is ruining your relationship. And by the end of the episode, I'm going to give you 5 things you can do to change this. But first, let me provide a disclaimer. I'll be briefly discussing concepts that have very real negative impacts on your mental health, because they often occur in the context of abusive relationships. And as a therapist who is also a trauma survivor and works with trauma survivors every week, I don't want to minimize the real impact of this when they show up in relationships. Things like gaslighting, narcissism, boundary violations, and other toxic dynamics that occur in relationships are extremely damaging. And the damage created by these dynamics causes people to question their own reality, their worth, and their ability to trust. That's what makes the casual misuse of these terms so harmful. It leads people in healthy relationships to pathologize normal conflict, while also watering down the language that people in genuinely abusive relationships need to describe what's happening to them. Both of those outcomes are harmful, and both of them are being accelerated by videos from unqualified creators. Everything I'm going to share today comes from a combination of what I'm seeing as a therapist, what I'm hearing from colleagues in this field, and what's showing up in the research. So let's get into how these dynamics show up on social media platforms like TikTok. A recent study found that new TikTok accounts are exposed to mental health content every 73 seconds. Every 73 seconds, y'all. That means if you open the app and scroll for 5 minutes, you're going to encounter at least 4 videos telling you something about your psychology, your attachment style, your relationship, or your partner's alleged disorder. And a lot of that content isn't coming from licensed mental health professionals. Instead, it's coming from people who had a bad breakup, or read a pop psychology book, or became a life coach, and now have a ring light and an opinion. But I'm not saying they're all bad. Some are very well-meaning. Some are even helpful. But here's the problem. On TikTok, the most viral content is not the same thing as the most helpful content. The algorithm doesn't reward complexity. It rewards outrage and fear. And when you apply outrage and fear to your intimate relationship, you get chaos instead of a way to promote connection and understanding. According to research published in Psychology Today, over 83% of mental health advice on TikTok is misleading. And nearly 15% contains content that is actively harmful. Things like questionable quick fix solutions or oversimplified diagnostic checklists that lead people to believe they or their partners have personality disorders. So let's talk about how this plays out in your relationship. I'm going to discuss the 4 biggest ways I see TikTok therapy content damaging real couples. The first damaging point is the weaponization of therapy speak. And this is the biggest one I see in my practice, and it's getting worse. Terms like gaslighting, narcissist, trauma response, boundary violation, and toxic have entered our everyday vocabulary. And on the surface, that sounds like progress. More people understanding mental health language can be really useful. But here's what's happening instead. These terms are being misapplied and weaponized. I hear this all the time from friends, from other therapists talking about what they're seeing in their practices, and honestly, in conversations everywhere. Someone will say their partner is gaslighting them because they had a different perspective on something. This could be something as simple as disagreeing about what happened at dinner, or something more complex like having different views on how to spend quality time together or navigating finances. It might sound something like, my partner told me I was overreacting when we had a fight last night, and the next morning they watched a TikTok and came back saying I was gaslighting them. But that's not gaslighting. Does it feel good? No. Is it worth addressing? 100%. But there's a difference between a partner who's being dismissive and a partner who's psychologically manipulating you. Gaslighting is a sustained, deliberate pattern of psychological manipulation designed to make someone question their reality. Viewing something differently than your partner, whether it's what happened, how it felt, or what it means for your relationship, is just a disagreement, not manipulation. And disagreements, even painful ones, are not the same as abuse. So let me give you an example of what gaslighting actually looks like. Imagine someone hits their partner, and then afterwards they tell their partner it didn't happen. That's gaslighting. It's a deliberate attempt to convince someone that their lived experience didn't occur. That is fundamentally different from a moment where one partner says something dismissive, like you're overreacting, and the other partner raises their voice because they're frustrated and their nervous system is overwhelmed. Is raising your voice ideal? No, it's not. Is it something worth working on? Absolutely. But a reactive moment during a heated argument is not the same as a sustained pattern of psychological manipulation designed to make someone doubt their own reality. Those are 2 very different things, and when we treat them as the same, we lose the ability to talk about either one accurately. And regarding the frequent use of the term narcissism, clinical psychologists have pointed out that narcissistic personality disorder affects less than 1% of the population. But on TikTok, somehow, every viewer's ex is a narcissist. When you label your partner with a clinical diagnosis because of a 60-second video, you're reducing your partner to a case study instead of viewing them as the complex, layered human being they actually are. And you can't build intimacy with someone you've already diagnosed. In this instance, you're just replacing communication with a conclusion. So instead of having an actual conversation when you get into a fight, you might be throwing out, "You're gaslighting me," or "You're such a narcissist." But that's not communication. That's a weapon. And that's not how you build a healthy relationship. The second damaging point is that algorithm feeds your worst fears. Here's something most people don't stop to think about before making conclusions about the health of their relationship. TikTok's algorithm is not designed to help your relationship. It's designed to keep you scrolling. And the way it keeps you scrolling is by feeding you content that triggers strong emotional reactions, especially anxiety, outrage, and suspicion. So imagine you're having a rough week with your partner. You watch one video about signs of emotional neglect. The algorithm registers your engagement, and then it shows you another, and then one about covert narcissism, then one about love bombing, then one about how you should never tolerate a partner who doesn't respond to text within an hour. And within 15 minutes, you've gone from "we're having a rough week" to asking yourself, am I in an abusive relationship? And that leap didn't happen because of anything your partner did. It happened because an algorithm identified your anxiety and monetized on it. This is textbook confirmation bias. If you're already feeling insecure, every video you see will confirm that your insecurity is justified. TikTok doesn't show you the video that says, hey, maybe your partner just had a bad day at work, because that video doesn't get views. But the one that says, 5 signs your partner is emotionally unavailable and will never change, that gets millions. Because fear performs better than nuance. And just like that, you're living in an echo chamber designed to keep feeding your fears so you keep feeding the platform. The third damaging point is one-size-fits-all advice for infinitely complex relationships. In therapy, when a client tells me about a conflict with their partner, my first question is almost always, tell me more. Because context is everything. The same behavior can mean completely different things depending on someone's history, their attachment style, their nervous system state, cultural background, and what happened that morning. But content on TikTok doesn't offer us the luxury of asking that question. Because in 60 seconds, you can't diagnose anything. You can't understand the depth of a relationship. You can't account for the 1,000 variables that make your situation different from the situation the creator is describing. But the format forces false certainty. Every video has to have a clear takeaway, a definitive answer, a list of signs, and ultimately a verdict. If he does this, he's not the one. If she says that, she's manipulating you. But this leaves no room for individual context. And in real relationships, individual context is the difference between a breakthrough and a breakup. I've heard stories from colleagues, from people in my life, and from conversations in this field about couples who nearly ended their relationship because one partner binge-watched polyamory content and decided monogamy was just societal conditioning, or because someone watched a series on attachment theory and decided their partner's need for alone time meant they were avoidant and incapable of being in a committed, loving relationship. But these are complex, nuanced topics being reduced to sound bites. And real people are making life-altering decisions based on them. The fourth damaging point is that it replaces conversation with consumption. And this might be the most overlooked one. The more time you spend consuming content about your relationship, the less time you spend actually being in your relationship. Think about what's happening when you're lying in bed next to your partner at night, both of you on your phones, and you're watching videos about how to fix your relationship. You're getting a dopamine hit from the feeling of insight, that, oh my God, that is exactly what's happening to me moment. But you're not actually talking to the person 6 inches away from you. TikTok creates the illusion of progress without the discomfort of real work. Watching a video about communication skills feels productive, but watching a video is not the same thing as doing the necessary work that is required to maintain a healthy relationship where both you and your partner are getting your needs and wants met. Productive is turning to your partner and saying, hey, I've been feeling disconnected this week. Can we talk about it? That might be uncomfortable, but that's vulnerability. That doesn't come with background music and a caption, but that's what actually changes things. So what are 5 things you can do to start changing this? I'm not going to tell you to delete TikTok because that's unrealistic. And honestly, there is good content out there. And if finding a therapist isn't affordable right now or something that is stigmatized in your culture or family, then there is content out there that can be useful. But you need a filter, and not an algorithmic one, but a critical thinking one. So the first thing you can do is to check the creator's credentials before you absorb the content. This is your first line of defense. Before you let a video change how you feel about your partner, take 10 seconds to look at who made it. Are they a licensed therapist, psychologist, or counselor? Or are they an influencer or someone who just went through a bad breakup and is seeking an audience for validation? There is a massive difference between someone who has spent thousands of hours in supervised clinical training, learning to hold the complexity of human relationships, and someone who is good at being confident on camera. Credentials don't guarantee quality, but they are a baseline indicator that this person has been trained to understand nuance, ethics, and the limits of their own knowledge. If you can't find credentials in their bio, treat the content as entertainment and not education. And definitely don't use it as evidence in your next argument with your partner. If you want to see what credible relationship content actually looks like on social media, start with Esther Perel. She's a psychotherapist who's been practicing for more than 35 years. She's written 2 best-selling books, she has TED Talks with millions of views, and she hosts a podcast called Where Should We Begin, where she features real therapy sessions with real couples. She's one of the most respected voices in modern relationship psychology, and the kind of creator who brings clinical depth to social media rather than stripping it away. The second thing you can do is apply a 24-hour rule before you act on anything you watched. So if a TikTok video makes you feel a sudden rush of clarity about your relationship, especially a negative one, like, oh my God, my partner is a narcissist, don't act on it immediately. Give it 24 hours, sleep on it, and then see if the feeling persists once you've stepped away from the screen. And this also will help you build distress tolerance. That's your ability to feel something uncomfortable and not immediately act on it. That skill is everything in a relationship because most of the damage I see in couples doesn't come just from the problem itself. It comes from how someone reacted before they had time to think. So what you'll find is that the urgency usually fades if you give it a 24-hour period. That's because the feeling wasn't generated by your relationship. It was generated by the video you watched. The editing, the music, the confident delivery, the comment section validating your every word, all of that creates a manufactured emotional experience. It feels real, but it may not capture the complexity of your experience. The 24-hour rule creates space between consumption and action. And in that space, your rational brain has time to catch up to your emotional brain. Next, you should also talk to your partner. Don't just talk about them. So a pattern that comes up consistently in my work and in conversations with other therapists is someone watches a relationship video. They feel triggered, and then, instead of talking to their partner about it, they go to the comments section, or they DM a friend, or they post their own video venting about their relationship. They're talking about their partners to the entire internet, and they haven't said a single word to their partner. And this is one of the fastest ways to erode trust and intimacy. Your partner deserves to hear your concerns directly in a conversation where they can respond, clarify, and participate. The internet cannot do that for them. Next time a video stirs something up for you, try this instead. Put your phone down, turn to your partner, and say something like, I've been feeling disconnected lately. I need more reassurance from you, but I'm not sure how to ask for it. That is way more powerful than any TikTok comment thread. The fourth thing you should do is audit your algorithm intentionally. Most people don't realize they have more control over their algorithm than they think. If your For You page is full of content about toxic relationships, red flags, and worst-case scenarios, that's because you've been engaging with that content, watching it to the end, liking it, and commenting on it. But luckily, you can actively retrain your algorithm. Start by using the Not Interested feature on videos that make you feel anxious or suspicious about your relationship. Then intentionally seek out and engage with content from licensed professionals who emphasize nuance, repair, and both partners' perspectives. Follow creators who talk about relationship strengths and not just red flags. Follow couples therapists who model what healthy communication actually looks like. Your feed is a reflection of what you've been consuming. Change the input, and you change the emotional environment you're living in. And last, you can use TikTok as a doorway and not a destination. So think of TikTok as the trailer, not the movie. If a video sparks a genuine concern, that's useful. Write it down. Bring it to a licensed therapist if you're able to. Talk to your partner about it. Use it as a conversation starter and not the final verdict. The problem is never that people are learning about attachment styles or communication patterns online. The problem is when that surface-level learning replaces the deep, uncomfortable, individualized work that real growth requires. A 60-second video cannot replace a 60-minute therapy session. It can't replace a vulnerable, messy, real conversation with the person you love. It can point you toward the door, but you still have to walk through it yourself, with your partner in real life. And if cost or access is a barrier to therapy, look into sliding scale therapists, community mental health centers, or evidence-based self-help books from actual clinicians. Those resources will serve you infinitely better than your For You page. So remember that your partner is not a case study. And a stranger on the internet, no matter how confident they sound, no matter how many followers they have, does not know your relationship. You know your relationship. You and your partner are the only two experts on what's happening between you. Everyone else, including me, including TikTok content creators, including any therapist, is just offering a lens. Make sure the lens you're using is one that's grounded with care, not one that was manufactured for clicks. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love it if you share it with someone who needs to hear it. Send it to a friend, send it to your partner. Start a conversation about it. Because the best thing you can do for your relationship isn't to watch more content about relationships. It's to put the phone down and actually be in one. Thanks for listening to the Rise to Intimacy podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, know that healing is possible and you don't have to do it alone. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a rating and review for us at ratethispodcast.com/rise. It really helps others find us, and I'm so grateful for all your support. You can learn more about my coaching packages for individuals and couples at risetointimacy.com. And remember, sex therapy isn't for people who are broken. It's for people brave enough to look beneath the surface.